joined by one of our favorite people that we met at PodFest back in January, I guess it was now, Sara Lohse. Did I say that right?
You did. I was actually impressed. I was
Oh,
waiting
so
to see if you'd mess it
exciting.
up.
I love it. Sara, I'm just so excited to get to have you here today, get to have more conversations about what it's like to own your story, build your brand, all of these things. But before we jump in, I don't know that all of our listeners know who you are. Why don't you take a moment, introduce yourself, and tell us a little bit about what you do?
Awesome. Well, I am so excited to be here. I love you guys. And you invited me on the show and then forgot. So it's been many months until I got my invitation again. So I'm glad that we got it scheduled.
I love it.
But
Thank
yeah,
you for your grace.
I am patient. Good things come to those who wait.
Yes.
Uh, I am a storyteller is the
Mm.
most simple way to put it. I'm a podcast producer, a marketer, and I've been in the marketing communication space for my whole career. And I just am obsessed with telling stories. I have a book out on how to tell your story, how to figure out what your story is and the best ways and places and all of that we could start to just share who we are and use that to build our brand.
I love that. Angela, you, as Sara mentioned, it's been
Um,
a few months. Tell us a little bit more about what re-prompted the reminder that this was still on our to-do list.
well, for starters, I get to hold the place in Sarah's story of being a first. And Sara gave a speech, and I've been kind of on a journey the last few years of really, I think I'm a good storyteller. I want to become a great storyteller. And so I've been on just a quest to get better at it. So I've read books, I study things. Anyway, so anytime I'm at a conference and I see, oh, storytelling, I'm going to go. And I am telling you, I was writing down, I'm like taking notes and taking pictures. I'm like, I have to remember this. So, Sara, can I have my picture taken with you? And y'all know I do a lot of speaking. I don't often fangirl, but I was like, I just want to I want to memorialize this. I want to post it on the socials, all the things. And so what's funny is that Sara was like, yeah, I'll take your picture.
I
And she started
literally
to grab
thought
my
you wanted.
phone.
I thought you just like you were standing with a friend and you guys just wanted a photo and I'm just like, yeah, like I'll
And
take
I
that
went,
for you.
no, 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 I want a picture with you. Anyway, it was very fun, very cute. So somebody took our picture. And then the whole conference, I just went, I'm Sarah's first. And Larry's like, oh, hey, Angela, I've been hearing all about you. Anyway, but fantastic storyteller. And then follow her on LinkedIn, of course, and you're always posting. And you had a very cool story about, I think it was somebody from PodFest that got
It
a pen.
was.
And so, yeah, why don't you share the story? Because I will bungle it up. But it reminded me I need to get her telling stories on our podcast.
Yeah, so when my book came out last April, about a year and a half ago, I it's called Open This Book and it's part journal. So when I published the book, I had these pens made. And my idea was like, if I'm going to send somebody a copy or if they buy it from me personally, I'm going to give them a pen. And it just says some like corny message, like everybody has a story. I can't wait to read yours or something. I was really disappointed in myself because after I made them, my illustrator was like, oh, did you have it just say, use this pen? Because the book is Open This Book. And I was like, all right, missed opportunity. You're better at this than I am. So it
That's
doesn't say that.
amazing.
But I have these pens, and anytime someone gets a book from me, I give them a pen. So I'm at a conference like 2-3 weeks ago in Dallas, Texas. And I'm sitting with a woman I just met. We're talking about my book, talking about stories. And a woman comes up to me and she's like, I'm so sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to say hi. I saw you speak at PodFest. You gave me your book. I loved it. I just want to say thank you. So we have her sit with us and we're talking for a little bit. And the woman I was already sitting with, she had just gone on Amazon and ordered my book. And I had the pens with me. And I was like, oh, well, she just ordered my book. I have to give her a pen. And the woman who had walked up, her name was Lisa. I was like, I know she said that she got my book. I don't know if I gave her a pen. Let me grab two. So I give one to Stephanie and I go to give one to Lisa. I'm like, hey, I don't know if I gave you one of these at PodFest. And she pulls out the notebook that she's using for the conference and pulls a pen out of the binding. And it's literally just my pen. And I just stare at her. I'm like, what? You already have it. She's like, yeah, you gave it to me at PodFest. It's my favorite pen. And
Oh.
like the metal clip thing is about to fall off. Like it is clear like this has been used. And I gave her a backup one now in case it breaks. She can't be without her favorite pen. But I was just so blown away. I'm like, what are the odds? It's been almost a year. We're in a different state, completely
Mhm.
different conference. The conference is not podcast related. And she just happens to be here using the pen I gave her. And it just
Love
made my heart
pen.
so happy that I just get to know that the pen that I gave her has been part of so many stories that she's been able to write. And it just made my heart happy.
Well, I just want to add a little bit more, I don't know, encouragement and just thank you, gratitude, I guess, because more than just your pin has stuck with us. It is like your story, the way you talk about things, your energy when you show up. Like we have talked about it many times. You live rent free in our brains, and I just thank you. Thank you for the work that you do in encouraging
Oh,
people to own their stories and all of that. And I just hope that you know it's sometimes it's more than just the pin. It is also that impact that you're having on other people. And I'm excited that you get to be here and that our listeners get to have a snapshot and a window into that so that they can experience with the joy and encouragement you
oh,
bring to people.
oh, you're so sweet. Thank you.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say. Mm. Yes, one thing that I take away from Sarah, and this is the second time, is find joy. You don't have to go out manufacturing it, right? Something simple like somebody wants a picture, somebody has my pen, like you find so much joy. And like I remember at PodFest when you would meet somebody and they would share their story, like you just are effervescent and you are such a good reminder for me to just keep finding joy in whatever's going on. So, thanks,
Can I be on this
Sarah.
show every day? This is just, oh my gosh, you guys are
I
so
mean,
nice.
Well, that's funny. It's like sometimes we're nice. Sometimes we're like, let's make each other cry and like talk about our hard things. So you get a little bit of a mixed bag.
we've
Speaking of,
called
what a great
BS on. Oh, I was gonna say we've called BS on some clients or
some
on some
guests.
podcast guests here
Mm.
because we're like, I don't know if I buy that or not. So not
I
necessarily.
will say, speaking of harder things, it's not like your this journey of being somebody who encourages people to own their story is just flowers and daisies and rainbows. Like there are hard moments within that. And I think that that message is one that I carry is owning your story and then being able to articulate it. Like it does start to get to the point where you can be a good storyteller. You can use your story in a way that is beneficial to yourself or to others. You kind of there's the step before that of like, no, I'm gonna tell this story. I'm gonna own this thing that happened to me. And I don't know, do you have encouragement for people who might have hard journeys? They're not really sure how to or if they should start telling people about it.
Absolutely. I think it always kind of sounds weird when I say this, but when somebody is struggling to be open with their story and like tell their story, a lot of the times it's because like they don't want to be vulnerable, they don't want to like show that part of themselves. And what I've always said is just stop making it about you. And it sounds weird when I say that because like this is your story. The idea is that it's about you, but if you reframe it, it's not about you, it's about the person who needs to hear it.
Mm.
And if there's something that was really difficult that you went through, but you're on the other side of it, you made it through, you did it, you're thriving now. Something happened, but you pushed through it. Somebody else out there is going through something difficult. And for them to be able to hear that you went through something similar and you made it, and just to be able to feel seen and feel like they can relate to somebody, they have a little bit more hope that like everything's going to work out, it's going to be okay. That is why you tell that story. The story isn't, haha, look at me, look what I've done. It's this happened, I made it through, and so can you. So just reframing it a little bit like that and not thinking of yourself in that moment, but thinking of the person on the other side that just really needs to hear it. I feel like it makes it a little easier.
I do have a question. Since I just said sometimes I'm going to be the contrarian today. I drew the hat, drew the straw. The We all know people who share their story in a very victim-y, try to get attention, oh, woe is me sort of way. And so So then what I think sometimes happens is people are like, "Oh, I don't want yeah. It was such a long time ago. I don't want to sound like a victim. I don't
Mhm.
want to like I don't want to make it I don't want to make it all about me." What would you say to the person that is worried the about sounding like they're victimy?
That's a really good question. I think I see this a lot. Um, and I always talk about tell your story, tell your story. Everybody has a story, you need to tell your story. And for some reason people kind of get caught up on what that story is. And we latch onto that big traumatic, dramatic, sensational story, usually from like our childhood, whatever it is. That's the story that they all think when I say tell your story, that's what I mean. That's not necessarily what I mean. And I've seen a lot of like speaker competitions. I've judged speaker competitions, and the the assignment is always you have like 3 minutes, you need to tell a story, it has to have a message that you're trying to teach. And they will pick their message and they will assign it to that story, and it does not fit. So that is when it feels like you are just clinging to this story. I want people to know like this one story. Let me try to just shove this message on the end of it. It doesn't match, it doesn't make sense. And when you hear the message at the end, you're kind of left feeling like, okay, like that's a good message, but why did I need to hear that story?
Hmm.
Like for me to hear that message. So I think that's it. Like that's kind of the answer there is if the story that you're thinking isn't relevant to the message you're trying to get across, what you're trying to teach, your purpose for being on that stage, on that podcast, pick a different story.
I
Because
feel like oh, sorry. I feel like a lot of people on LinkedIn do this. It's the
Mhm.
this weekend I was playing with my kids and my son fell down and scraped his knee. And you know, we all have that moment in business where we fall down and scrape our knee. And you know what you really need? You need my particular consulting to help you
Mhm.
when you fall down in your business and scrape your knee. Book a call today. And it was like,
Yeah.
neat. Like, I love that you,
See,
I don't,
when I hear that, I
cool.
just picture the kid is just like still on the ground crying, and the mom is just on LinkedIn, like, hold on, Timmy, let me write this up first. I'll get you a
Exactly.
band aid later.
I'll take a
Like, this is
picture
a
of
great
you.
moment for social media. It's
Yes.
you see it all the time. And honestly, that's kind of the reason that I wrote my book, because we all have that big story. We've all been through something really difficult, and we think that that's a story that we need to tell, but there are so many stories in our lives. Like everything that we go through is a story. And we don't think that our stories are worth telling or worth listening to because they're not that big, dramatic, traumatic, sensational story. And yeah,
Oh, sorry. I
okay.
didn't mean to. Oh, in my quest for storytelling, Matthew Dick is somebody I listen to a lot, and he has a book called Storyworthy, and he has like four major big things that happened to him. He used to win, like he's won the Grand Slam like 6 times, but his dramatic stories of I almost died, his dramatic stories of like I was arrested, like none of those stories actually win him competitions because he's like they're so crazy, they're so far out there that they're completely unrelatable.
Yes.
And instead, he's like, no, it's the small stories,
Hmm.
like, and he tells the story that is just so resonating, probably because it's in both books about like this one night and his dog was wanted to go out for a walk at 2 o'clock in the morning. And he ends up walking on his main street in his boxers because his dog just insisted on keeping going farther forward. And at that moment, he remembered that his dad, when his dad left the family, which he has always seen as traumatic, he didn't think about that his dad lost his dog in addition to like leaving his family, and it was just this moment of like, wow, that sucks. I would hate to lose my dog. I couldn't imagine. And it was like in this weird way just so much more relatable, and so, like, he can literally just say, like, when I was walking my dog, and that story comes back of, like, we've all lost things, and just the idea of putting himself in his dad's position and not just looking at it from his own perspective really helped him do, like, a lot of healing. And it's this super pedantic story that he did. He encourages us to write our stories every day, and I have not, and I want to. I keep meaning to. That's I'm that it's September. I think I should start my new habit again.
I mean, you
I
can always
love
wait till
that.
January 1st. It's fine.
I hate January.
Same.
You can go back and listen to one of our previous podcasts about why September is the best time to start new goals. We'll put those links in the show notes for
Absolutely.
everybody. I love this because I think that our everyday stories, there's such a balance. It's almost like there are two ditches. There is one ditch whereas you use your kid's skinned knee to try and make a business sale, and that felt weird and inauthentic. There's the other side that is you dismissed every story that you have because it's not a big, significant, life changing moment.
It's
So
not the headline worthy one.
yeah, it
It's
doesn't
not the one.
matter.
It's a 24/7 news cycle. We're surrounded by headlines. Everything
Right.
is a headline. Some of them are not headline worthy. I've like the amount of headlines I've seen of like this female celebrity went out without makeup on. Like, okay, we didn't need a news article about that. But for
Yep.
the most part, like we see these like really big headline stories and we think those are the stories that like we need to have.
Yeah.
You don't, it's exactly like you said, like those aren't the ones we relate to.
Mm-hmm.
We relate to the little stories, just the minutia stories, like the things that are happening just day to day. And this is why I think stand-up comedians are some of the best storytellers in the world
Mm-hmm.
because they walk into a room, a stadium, a concert hall, wherever they are, and they need to tell stories that are going to relate to every single person there. So
Mm-hmm.
there's that like classic joke like, what about airline food? Like we're always talking about traffic. It's because
Yeah.
everyone experiences that. We all know
Right.
what that is. And there is a quote by Ira Glass that is, great stories happen to those who can tell them. And that is the
Mm.
first quote that I put in my book. I love that quote.
Mm.
And it's exactly that. It's the comedian is such a great storyteller that they can take this just really mundane topic, this mundane experience, and tell it in a way that makes it compelling, makes people want to listen, makes people laugh, but it's mundane enough that everyone's been through it so they can relate to it.
I like
What
that.
What are some other tips that if somebody's getting started on their storytelling journey, and especially if we're talking to business owners, authors, coaches, that sort of thing? We have a wide range in our audience. What are some other tips that you would have for them on their storytelling journey?
Ooh, I think we need to kind of reverse engineer it. I kind of touched on this before with we pick our story, we pick our message, we put it together. Or we know like this is the story that I want to tell. How can I make it fit? I don't think we should start with the story. We need to start with like what is the classic like begin with the end in mind. Think about what it is that you want people to walk away with. And then you really just have to think about your own experience learning that. And the story will come to you. And it's interesting because before I actually like sat down and was like, I need to write this book and like formalize some of this, I never put much thought into it because I just did it naturally. And I
Mhm.
don't realize I'm doing it until people call me out on it. But I tell a story every time I open my mouth. And I was at Podcast Movement like 2 weeks ago in Dallas, and we were talking about books. And instead of like, I was recommending a book, and I did not mention anything that the book was about. What I said was, okay, like jump scares in movies? There was a jump scare in this book. I am sitting there reading this physical book, and I threw it across the room because I was so shocked by what I read. And they're like, oh my God, I need to read that book. They have no idea what that book is. But I told them a story of what happened to me while I was reading it,
Mm-hmm.
and they wanted to relate to that experience. We overthink the concept of stories. we think that a story has to be this very formal beginning, middle, and end, very formal. There's character, conflict, whatever it is. No, just talk about what happened to you. Talk about what you did. Talk about what you learned. Just think back to that day, what happened. And it's way more simple, I think, than people try to make it. And that's why people struggle with it so much. They just make it more difficult than it has to be.
I can tell you, as somebody who's done a lot of speaking and got 2 books, the idea of here's your message and go find a story was actually very excruciating for me. And I actually really struggled with that a lot. I found I flipped it a little bit. And for my second book, I ended up writing 80 stories. That was the first thing I did because I listening to the guru of the time, and I made an outline of all the things I wanted to write a story about, and I just jotted them all down, and then I wrote the stories, and I knew it was going to be a process, but then I looked at the stories as Bob Goff was instructing us to do, and I looked at the stories and said, what am I learning? Why did I put that story down? Like, what is the point? Like, I ended up telling some story of this incline train in Italy, and I'm like, why? What is that? And so I ended up going through and like kind of putting like, what did I learn? What was the message? How could this be helpful? And almost tagging the stories. Then when I wrote my book, I like could reference them back easily. And for me, I had experienced in a lot of speeches where I would be like, I know a good story. I know a good story. I can't get it. And so for me, getting a bunch of stories out, I didn't use all 80 of them in my book, but I now have this repertoire of things. And I had, outlined it one day of all the things. So that's another possibility. If there's anybody out there that gets a little bit like, I can't ever think of one. Okay, well then write a bunch of them down, and I bet it'll also get your brain thinking of stories in a little bit different way.
Yeah, I have a formula for that I use. And thank you so much for bringing in other people's strategies and from their books and ignoring the one in mine. Rude. No,
I'm like, I bought your book. I haven't read it yet. I'm just realizing that as I sit here.
Gasp.
Now you have homework. No, but the way that I have it in mine is, and this is probably just because I speak at a lot of conferences. So I'm always filling out those like conference speaker applications. Take your story and put them into that like conference presentation format. What's the title? What's the like brief description? What are the key takeaways? And just like you did, like you can have that as, I know the word Rolodex is very dated, but for some reason I still just love that word. But having that Rolodex of just those stories that you can go back to. But I think something that you had just said kind of stuck out, and you said, why am I trying to write these stories? And I think that's kind of part of the problem, is you're not trying to write a story. The story already happened. The story is already there. Like, you're not a novelist. Maybe you are, but like, you're not writing this, like the great American novel, coming up with this story. The story is there. All you're doing is just sharing it.
Oh, I love that.
So it's a lot easier when you don't think of it as like, well, I don't know how to write a story. Okay, that's fine. Tell me what happened.
Well, you lived and it. I think that the moments, even maybe a better question is like, why does this moment stand out to me? Why do I think about that incline train in Italy and I can't put my finger on it? And so maybe it's not the storytelling, but it's like, no, this impacted me in some way. Let me articulate that. Once I articulate what is the impact that this moment had on me, maybe I need to craft the story from there. I don't know. I think that there's some we have those moments that stick with us, those stories that then you tell somebody else, like, I guess you had to be there. I don't know. This like changed my life and I can't quite explain it. That's okay. Practice, get to the point where you can explain it. But if that moment changed how you viewed something, impacted you dramatically.
Okay. I literally didn't know why I wrote that. And that book, I don't think that story ended up in the book. I'll have to go back and look. But now, as you asked that question, I instantly knew the answer. Why does that story stick with me? And it was the last day of our cruise, and we had been just tourist, 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 tourist. And I couldn't take it anymore. I could not take one more day of tourist crap. And so we were in Naples and I was like, I'm planning the day. Cause I'd also was trying to like, okay, what do y'all want to do? What do y'all want to do? And I was like, nope, everybody shut up. I got this day. And I wanted to have an authentic, immersive experience. And so I went and explored Naples, uh, on the internet that night, the night before. This was not like planned way in advance, but it was a reaction to I was so over the tourist experience. I wanted to experience authentic, real Italy. And I found the incline train, which actually took us into a part of town that was way way away. I literally did not even, I wrote that story down like 4 years ago and was like, well, I don't know. When even the book came, I didn't know why I wrote it. When you ask the question in that way, I'm like, oh, because it literally transported me into a better experience of Italy. It was my favorite day of that whole cruise. So anyway, thank you for asking that story.
I love it. Okay,
love
I want to
that.
share my tip that I have since you guys both shared tips on story development. I have found for my own self, I use very low stakes situations to practice. My low stakes situation is Chamber of Commerce networking events where everybody comes up to you and says, "Hi, how are you? What do you do? How was your day?" It's particularly rough when you have that like middle knowing somebody where it's like, "Yep, I know what you do. Don't know you well enough to like ask the like super big questions, like really get in deep," which is my preference. So then I'll be like, "Yeah, my day was really crazy this morning. You wouldn't believe it. 12:03 a.m. hits on the clock, and you know what I hear on the baby monitor? Vomit. That's been my day." And I'll like use that opportunity to share and test and practice, because if I bomb, kind of don't care. Like whatever. We're just networking at Chamber of Commerce events. Like it's fine. It's not that I feel like my reputation is completely worthless there, but I don't mind practicing. I don't mind. It's different
Well,
than
because
on a stage in front of other people.
a lot of those people, you'll get another chance to tell another
Right.
story a month later or 2 weeks later. So some of them you will actually, even if you will have the opportunity to reset their impression of you. I
And
love
it's
that.
so fun to get to have that moment or that day where it's like, ooh, everything locked in. And then I feel like the life of the party of the networking event. Like everybody's coming up to my little circle. I've got people laughing, feeling good, got people connecting. Like that feeling to walk away from, I'm like, all right, what worked today about that? How do I make that work? I will say maybe one of my strategies, I'd be curious, Sarah, your thoughts on this. I sometimes don't let the truth stand in the way of a good story. And so like, it's not always 100% accurate. It's like 95% accurate. And that 5% is like, yeah, it got a little bit more heightened. Suddenly the vomit is projectile across the room. It wasn't. It just, I don't like, sometimes in the performance of the story, it does get a little bit exaggerated. And I feel a little bad about
Artistic
that.
license.
Yeah. I'm like, it's my own
Mhm.
life. I don't know. I can do what I want with it. I
Reality
try not to
is
be
all perception.
dishonest. Yeah. I'm not dishonest. It's a little exaggerated
No, I
outcomes.
I think we all do that, and I think that's fine. I if the details don't change the story itself, you can tweak them. Like that's
Mhm.
okay. Like I said, great stories happen to those who can tell them.
Right.
So if you have to change a couple details to make that a great story, no one's going to be sitting there like, I don't think it was that much vomit. I think
Mhm.
she's lying. No, they're like, oh God, that sucks. My kids have done that. I get it. Like
Yeah.
they're not sitting there thinking about like, I did you measure the amount of vomit that came out? Because this
Let's
seems
was it
excessive.
was it 1/4 cup? Was it really 3/4
How
cup?
far did it go?
Right.
Did you measure?
Okay, y'all got to stop because I can't pick a new topic. But what I was going to say is the opposite is also true. Sometimes people tell stories and they think we need every little detail. Was it Tuesday or Wednesday? Or wait, oh no, it was Monday for sure. And you're
Are
like,
you friends
Yeah,
with my mom?
you've already lost me on the story. Like, come on. And I like to tell the story in such a way that if they are interested in it and they ask me the next question, then I will expound on the details. But if they're not, then I didn't waste time telling them the details. I was at a networking event this week and I was like, this person has not stopped for 4.5 minutes. Cool. I am not interested. And she has not given me the opportunity to ask for the things that I was interested. So be careful. Those of you that are early storytellers, it's a thing to pay attention to.
Yes, I have 4 components to telling a compelling story.
Tell us.
And one of them is have the right amount of detail. And that's exactly what I say. And I always, I mean, I feel like I bully her a little bit, but I always use my mom as the example because she is the CEO of too many details in a story. And if I'm going to hear a story of what happened today, I need to know the backstory of every single person that was involved. And I will never forget the one time she told me a story and she told me George's entire background. And then she continues the story and we get to the end. I'm like, okay, but where was George? She's like, well, he was there. He wasn't even part of the story. He was just standing on the porch when this happened. Why do I now know George's wife's name and where he grew up? I didn't need that. If the details, it's the same thing as like changing the details. If the detail can be omitted and not change the outcome of the story, not make it like change whether or not it makes sense, you don't need it. All we're trying to do is get people to understand the point we're trying to make. You only need to share the details that are important to them. And that's even, I tell the same story on stages all across the country on every podcast. It's always the same stupid tattoo story, but I probably never tell the same story twice because I'm changing the details that I bring in based on what that audience is going to be interested in. So the details that you choose are so important. But if you use too many of them, people are going to get lost in the weeds. They're going to stop paying attention. You just want to stick to the things that are the most important. And like you said, if they want to know more, if they're like, okay, but who is George? Tell me about George. They can ask.
Yeah.
If they don't ask, it's because they don't need to know.
So the very first time I got published in Fast Company, I wrote a story about working in your family business. The story is about how my mom made me cry in family business. That's why she's laughing so big right now. But there were a couple of points where I referenced some specific quotes. After the article came out,
in Fast Company,
both my mom and my dad was like, I said that really good thing. Your mom didn't say that. I said that to you at work. And I was like, yeah. But at that point in the story, to have introduced a new character, like it would have been distracting from the point that I was trying to make. And so the same quote, it wasn't that big of a deal that I didn't say. And then my dad said, oh, by the way, he worked for the company too. They've been in business for this amount of time and blah, blah, blah. He's there too. It's like, it didn't actually matter that George was in the room. I'm just going to take what George said, that one funny thing, and give it to a different character.
Yeah.
Because the message was still the same. And I don't feel like it was crazy and authentic to make it so that the point of the story was cohesive. That it was fine. Anyway, my dad was a little salty about it, but he can get over it.
That happens all the time. Like that is super, super common. And it actually makes me think of a very famous example, I guess, is in the Harry Potter series. And love Harry Potter. Don't love the author. But I love the books. And in the end of the 4th book, he has seen Cedric die. And then to get to the train, he has to go on the carriages. But it's not until the 5th book that he sees the oh god, how could I not remember their names? Thestrals, thank you. He sees the Thestrals. Plot hole, he should have been able to see them at the end of the 4th because he'd already seen it. And they asked J.K. Rowling why. And she's like, it's the end of the book. It was too late to introduce a new concept, a new character, a new creature. So just waited until the 5th. And do the super dork fans like me find those little plot holes? Yeah. But does it actually impact the story at all for normal people? Absolutely not. And it just makes it make sense to the reader and makes it make sense to the listener. So that's really like Joe Saul-Sehy is Stacking Benjamin's host. He is the basis of my story. And what he says is the only responsibility we have is to our audience, is to our listener. So your responsibility in telling that story was not to your dad. It was to the person reading that story. And you wrote it in a way that would make the most sense to that person.
Right. I think you want to make it easy for the person listening to
Mhm.
engage, to take the message. I love that, just that framing and that voice. I love that message that your responsibility is to the audience. Make it easy for them. Don't make them work extra hard to understand, now, what am I supposed to do with this? What was the point of that? I
Mhm.
think those are some of my least favorite stories. Somebody gets to the end and I'm like, and we were really mean in college, and we would do this to our friend group, that anytime somebody told a really bad story, you get to the end and they'd be like, and then you found $5. Wow, what a great story. That's so exciting. So cool. And it just became the shorthand to be like, nope, I don't care. You didn't make me care. And so we would just be like, and then you found $5. Wow, what a cool story. Like, neato. We were pretty ruthless and brutal about it. But
I mean, we've all had that moment where we're halfway through a story and we realize that this is a really dumb story that no one needs to hear.
yeah.
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 No, that's
Well,
happened to me a lot.
okay. Well, we're going to throw back to 10th grade Sammy, ninth or 10th grade Sammy. And I was picking her up from high school, and we're driving home, and she is telling me, I mean, I knew her schedule because I got a story for every single period the um, of the day. And two things. Number one, she said, Mom, I'm so sorry. I tell you a lot. I talk a lot on our drive home. I go, honey, I live to hear every little detail of your life. Which is interesting because now we literally have a shorthand, and it's like, I want to tell you the ELD version of this story, the every little detail version, because we do need somebody that is willing to listen to every little detail, because sometimes in telling the every little detail, we actually sort it out and make sense of it ourselves. So I literally did do that. The second interesting thing is that my youngest daughter had always been picked up with her older brother, and they were at the age where I could leave them at home because Barry worked at home. So I would pick them up, drop them off, then go pick up Sammy. And this one day, Lexi rode home with Sammy, and she heard what you're supposed to tell your mother
Oh
after
my
the end
goodness.
of the day of school, what your mother is willing and loves to listen to, which is every little detail of your life. And it was so fun to watch how Lexi transitioned, because before it was like, how was your day? What happened at school today?
It's
It was
fine.
fine. It was fine. Nothing, not much. And after she had ridden with Sammy, I got like so many more details. It was modeled so much better, and I felt like I had a fuller picture of her life, and she just didn't even know. She didn't know that was a thing, that you could
Mhm.
be that way, because all she had ever seen is a boy's version of it's fine.
I
It's fine.
also want to add in, though, it wasn't just that I told you about each period, like first period and second period. I would also then be like, okay, and you will never guess, in the 5 minute passing period between first and second
Yes.
period, this happened. So
Well,
it
that's when the
wasn't
most
even,
exciting stuff happened in high school.
it is.
And
It
I
was
would be
so
like,
good.
so she would get in the car, and I'd be like, okay, so what's happening with such and such? And other moms would be like, we don't know anything like this about our kid. And I'm like, I listen. I
But
like
you
it.
also had to listen to probably about 60 to maybe 90% like random BS to get to the 40 to 10% that's like, now that's what I wanted to hear. Tell me more. Like, you,
Hmm.
as a teenager and a parent, you did have to listen to a lot of like, I
Sure.
don't care about these details to
Oh,
get the good, juicy stuff.
I had endured the toddler years of you guys telling me about the cartoon show and every little thing that happened in the cartoon show, which is probably how my son doesn't tell me good stories, is because I'm just like, I don't care. I would watch it myself. Tell me what happened to you. Tell me why you liked the show. Tell me about your experience. I'm here for it.
I
It's
love
funny. That
it.
makes me think of so many like stories from high school, which I try to not talk about anything that happened pre like 2016 because I don't know her. But
Feel that.
the way that I tell stories is I always start with like the punchline, and
Hmm.
that's how my like my story about my stupid tattoo became a story, because I started with, do you want to hear about the time I got a tattoo of a penis while I was in Ireland?
Hmm.
And yeah, they did. They wanted to hear that. But even like, you made me think of stories from high school that I always frame the same way without really thinking about it. Like there's one story, and a lot of the times the story doesn't live up to the punchline, but that makes it better.
Hmm.
Cause I'll be like, oh, you want to hear about like the first fight I ever got into in like 7th grade? And the end of the story is, oh no, we just had lunch together. Neither of us knew we were supposed to be in a fight, but people told us we were supposed to be in a fight. But no, we had lunch. It was lovely. And people are just looking at me like, okay, so you've never been in a fight? No, I've never actually fought anybody. But sometimes, like, just the way you frame a story. If someone asked me if I'd ever been in a fight and I started telling a story that ended with, well, no, like they'd be like, why'd you just tell me that?
Yes.
Yeah, when you frame it as like, oh yeah, you want to hear this? Even when it kind of ends with a letdown, it's entertaining enough to not matter.
Yes.
And so that's one of my like favorite storytelling techniques, is just starting with that hook, starting with that punchline.
I like it. Sara, this has been just such a fun conversation about our own stories and different things like that. I'm curious if you could leave people with one piece of advice about owning their stories, what would you want to leave people with?
Ooh. I think just remember that not only do you have a story worth telling, you have a lot of them. They say that everybody has a story, but really everybody is just an anthology of stories. And there's always an opportunity to tell a story. Telling a story is all it's going to do at a minimum is just have someone connect with you a little bit more, have someone relate to you a little bit more. There's rarely a bad outcome from telling a story, unless it's like a confession to a crime or something. But for the most part, telling a story is going to lead to some kind of positive connection for you. So don't be afraid to do it, and don't overthink it. Just talk about what happened. Talk about that day, that week, your life, whatever it is. And don't feel like it has to be a very polished, headline-worthy experience.
Thank you so much. If people want to find more about you or connect with you or hear the story about how you got a penis tattoo in Ireland, where can they find you?
So if you want to go to openthisbook.com, that is where you can find my book, which does have the entire Girl with the Penis Tattoo story. It is chapter 2, along with a bunch of other stories and techniques and all that fun stuff. Angela would tell you, but she hasn't read it. But while you're there, you'll be on my website. You can find my socials, find my info. Everything else is there as well.
That's amazing. Thank you so much. We are delighted to just get to finally have this conversation here for everybody else to hear, not just our own selves at a table outside of a conference. So thank you everybody for joining us today. If you're not on our email newsletter, go to the website, the letter B, freakingawesome.com, and sign up for that. Until next time, we hope you guys go be freaking awesome.